My name is David Basalski. You have all come to what we call the Entrepreneurial Strategy series. It's put on by Gearhart Law. Super, super excited about this topic. I've met so many entrepreneurs, and frankly, they just don't know how to tell the story the right way. They may, and from a patent perspective, maybe they're highly technical or highly scientific, and so that's sometimes that story kind of gets lost in kind of how they're trying to communicate. So we have three amazing speakers. Because this is all about storytelling and public relations and media and marketing, they should be able to introduce themselves. And so they are prepared for this. And so we're going to start with Julie Campbell, who was really the inspiration in this. I had heard I had heard her introduction, just like I heard introductions from all of you, and I said, "Wow, we need to do a session on this, right? Because there's so many entrepreneurs that just really need to know how to tell a story." And so I'm going to spotlight Julie. Julie, please, you're first. You're up. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little about yourself, and yeah, please take it away.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you. We can see you. Hold on.
Perfect. So thank you, David. I'm going to give a little bit longer than 30-second introduction here. Mine's going to go for about 3 minutes. And yes, it is prepared. That's part of what I do. So everyone, yes, I am the CEO and founder of Center Stage Connections, but my clients call me the Confidence Whisperer. Many people struggle with speaking confidently and concisely in pitches, meetings, presentations, and conversations. I've created a simple framework called the Talk and Be You method that helps you ditch the fear and speak concisely, authentically, and confidently so you make a lasting impact and you're remembered by your audience. When our self-doubt or lack of clarity gets in our way in those important public speaking moments, we need a way forward. I needed a way forward when this happened to me, and this is why I founded Center Stage Connections. I've curated everything I've learned from decades as an off-Broadway film, TV, commercial, voiceover actor, and storyteller. I use those skills every day, and I help CEOs, business owners, authors, physicians, scientists, and students tell their story using those same principles from the stage. Now, my why behind Center Stage Connections is deeply personal to me, and I'll take this opportunity to share that with you. I grew up in a physically and emotionally abusive home. My voice and the voices of those around me were ridiculed, diminished, and dismissed. Where the joy of human connection at work, at home, and in life was not to be trusted. But I will tell you, my journey through and beyond my family trauma is not my whole story, but it is the driving force behind my work at Center Stage Connections. So whenever I help a small business owner or a CEO step into their story with presence and authenticity, or I work with a team to speak more confidently and concisely to their clients about what they do and how they do it, or I get invited to speak at a corporation and university to talk to them about why and how stories connect us, I know that my work at Center Stage Connection matters. So I will leave you with this. Part of how I grew up that has stayed with me and that I do stand behind is that I was expected to have science and data and facts behind whatever it was I was going to say. So here it is. You should know that there's a neuroscientist. His name is Yuri Hassan. He's at Princeton University in New Jersey in the United States, not too far from where I live. He used a functional MRI in his lab with audience members who were there to listen to a presentation told aloud, much like we're doing right now. He wanted to demonstrate what actually happens inside our brains when stories are shared aloud. Prior to the presentation, the participants' brains showed different activity. But once the presenter started telling a story, The audience member's brain activity synced up and aligned. And the even cooler thing was it aligned with the presenter. So he concludes that his stories have enormous implications. His research has enormous implications for the power of connecting with others through stories. So what are you waiting for? If you want to get more connected, if you want to start a conversation that sparks a relationship, that builds your career, that grows your business, if you want to be remembered by investors, by customers or clients, become a better storyteller. That's it for me. Thanks, David.
Yes,
And I
thank
look
you,
forward to hearing
Julie.
from
No, thank you
Rosemary and
so
Seth.
much. Appreciate that. Love your Metro card necklace, just FYI. Looks
Thank
great.
you.
Okay, up next, our second speaker, Rosemary Ostman. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, David. Hello, everyone.
Hey,
And
Dave,
thank
real
you,
fast.
Julie.
You got to do that. There you go.
Thank you, Julie, for sharing that story, which I've known Julie for years and had never heard that story. So, and I'm very interested in what she had to say about the scientist from Princeton, because I also have some science that I use to support the work that I do. So my name is Rosemary Ostman. I am the founder and CEO of a strategic communications firm called RoseCom. We are based in Maplewood, New Jersey, so I'm not far from Summit, and glad to see we have a lot of New Jersey representation on this meeting today, but excited to meet everyone. RoseCom has been around for 21 years, so I'm a fellow entrepreneur, but been around for a while. And one thing that is constantly true across all of the 21 years and since the beginning of people is the power of storytelling. And a lot of people will say, oh, I love a good story. I love when I'm watching a movie or I'm reading a book and something really engages me on an emotional level. It changes the way I think, and it makes me trust the person more. It makes me believe more in what they're saying. It changes my behavior, and it makes that information that I've just heard more memorable. So I follow a different scientist than Julie follows. His name is Paul Zak, and he is out of Claremont University in California. And he did a similar study, and what he looked at was what's happening inside the brain, what hormones are being created when we hear a good story. And it turns out it's something called oxytocin. And I know we have some scientists in the meeting today. So you know what oxytocin is. That is called the love hormone. It's the hormone that our brains produce when we are meeting someone that we are falling in love with, when we are going into labor and giving birth to a child, and when we are nursing that child. So this is a powerful, powerful hormone that our bodies produce. So when you say something like, I love a good story, that's why. That's what's happening in your body chemistry, in your brain chemistry. And you all, as entrepreneurs, have the opportunity to give that gift to other people. You can create that reaction in other people. And that's why I love what I do, because we have that opportunity, we have that power. RoseCom is a strategic communications firm. You can imagine when I founded the firm in the aftermath of the dot-com bust in 2003, that it was largely about media relations, earned media. The media landscape has changed many, many times over the course of the last 21 years. We now have opportunities to not just rely on gatekeepers like journalists, but to talk to influencers, opinion makers. We also have many new channels that we can use to talk directly to our target audiences. Regardless of whether we are talking direct or we are leaning on third-party gatekeepers and encouraging them to help us amplify our stories, the power of storytelling remains the same. And that is what I do. And that is what I'm happy to be here to talk about today. So thank you all for being with us.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. Yeah, more from Rosemary and Julie later, but first, our third speaker, Seth Goldstein. You have a lot of QR codes around you. I love that. That's amazing.
Sorry,
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
asked prior, can I have them up? And
Yeah, I love it.
I
It's
hear
great.
back. So,
It's all good.
feel
It's all
free to
good.
scan them. That one down there is my business
It's-
card. That one up there is a free giveaway. So have at it. I'm a geek at heart. I'm Seth Goldstein. I am the co-founder and principal creative director of Goldstein Media. I'm also the chief bottle washer over at Podcast Mastery, which is a new sub brand of Goldstein Media, kind of helping like what Rich does, help people get better at podcasting, storytelling, interviewing. I'm a former journalist. When I went to school, cut my teeth in the newspaper world. Remember those? The newspapers where your hands would get filthy while you're reading them. They eventually got better at not getting your hands filthy, but still. I'm not old. I remember like the newsprint getting all over my hands and having to go wash my hands after reading the Sunday Times. So I do everything from websites through SEO. We do digital marketing, and we also do podcast coaching. We help people podcast and whatnot. I've been at this for the Goldstein Media side for 17 years. So like Rosemary says, she got in the strategic communications business at the best time at the dot-com bust. I got in at the bank bust in 2008. Where I was like, no one's gonna hire anyone right now. Let me hang my own shingle and kind of tell my story. And I find that a lot of storytelling comes into just your website, your SEO, your brand persona, and even podcasting. Even if you're doing an interview podcast, you want to get the other people who are on your show to tell their story. And that's the whole thing about journalism as well, is that you are telling a story, even if it's a hard news story that's very, structured, and very like, here's here's all the information you really need up front, but here's the details later on. You're still telling a story. So I've been a storyteller for as long as I can remember. I don't have a scientific quote. So I feel I didn't know we were going to do scientific quotations here. Thanks, guys. But tough crowd to follow, but I'm happy to contribute what I can. And Dave's awesome. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Seth. Appreciate you being here for sure. Okay, let's get into it a little bit. So, Julie, we'll start with you a little bit if we can. A lot of people on this call probably do not have experience storytelling. They probably have never taken an acting class. They probably maybe think they know how to tell a story. Like, what could you say to those? And then there are people that just can't. Some people can't even introduce themselves, stuff like that. So, like, what could you talk about? Like, I think we all get the importance of storytelling, but maybe you can talk about like the intersection between like acting, in a truthful way, I would imagine, and storytelling and kind of how important that is.
Sure. Thank you, David, for that question. So I'll take off the last part of that you said, which is kind of the acting part of it, that very often I get people sent to me either by themselves or sometimes by their higher level senior people who tell them that they need them to be more confident and clear on camera or in person. And I think that's the absolute worst direction to give to someone. As an actor, I've received lots of really good directions and terrible directions, but confidence is something that other people say about you. It's a quality that someone applies to you based on what they're perceiving. So to start off with that, what I ask people to do is get rid of the word confidence and just choose to show up with courage instead. That's a mindset shift that any of us can do. And frankly, that's where I start with what's the intersection of acting, telling a story for business. Shifting your mindset into what actors do to come to their stages. And the chunk of that is actually, how do you prepare for that? Not just what you are writing down in your content, but how you physically, vocally, breath-wise prepare for a situation, because these are high stakes moments for us when we're speaking. My high stakes moments is not your high stakes moment. But however that feels to you, there are things that you can actively do to calm yourself down, calm your nervous system down, starts with breathing, and to also present a physical and vocal presence even when you're nervous. So I take people through that framework. The second part of that is what you say. And this is where I know Rosemary has a lot to talk about as well as Seth, and that's the content. Where I come at that is I don't present to be a content creator, but what I do help people do is shape their story into those sticky story nuggets that help you be remembered by your audience with the first few seconds of when you begin speaking. Newsflash out there, our attention span is very short. And the last thing I read was people decide in 7 seconds whether or not they want to continue listening to you. So woohoo, we got that all going for us. So that's a tricky thing that we have to do, but it can be done. So how do you do that? You have to think first and start from your audience. So if your audience as a small business owner is investors or it's your customer or clients, those are two very different audiences. How much time do you have to speak? Do you have 30 seconds? If you do only have 30 seconds in an introduction, then you need to get out very quickly your polite introduction, your connection to why you're in the room, and what the expectation is for that audience who's sitting there. Those are those 3 elements. And I have a really fun interactive way I do that with actually one of my favorite movie clips from The Princess Bride. So that's part of it. And then the next part of it is the how. How do you communicate? That's pacing, pauses, those dreaded filler words, those ums, ah, well, basically, you know, all those things that we do in more casual conversation, but we don't necessarily want showing up in those higher stakes moments. That's the other part of it, is the how. Those 3 things, your mindset, what you say, and how you say it, actually there's 4, and your audience, all come together to create that connection. Does that
Thank you. Yeah, no,
get
that's
you on the
great.
road?
I was just like, I was kind of like mesmerized by you speaking. For sure. Like you're a really good communicator. So thank you for that, Julie.
I appreciate that. Thank you, David.
Rosemary, do you want to maybe comment on that? And it kind of maybe a good segue to you anyway, because we'll get into content. But any comments on what Julie said?
I love that was your reaction, that you were so mesmerized by Julie that you forgot that you needed to take back over as moderator.
Totally.
Mission accomplished. You know, I do want to piggyback on what Julie said, because I think it's really important that you understand that when people are, and the work that I do, sometimes you are physically in the same space with someone delivering a story. Sometimes you're sitting in a television studio and they can see you. Sometimes you're doing a phone interview for a podcast or radio. Sometimes you're speaking in print. You know, you are talking to a reporter and it will end up in a story. So I am very focused on a multimedia approach to understanding how to get your point across. But in the event that you have an opportunity to be physically seen, I think so much of what Julie talked about is important. People take away more of what you look like. Like, everyone's going to remember that Julie had that Metro card necklace on. They may not remember everything she said, with all due respect, but they will remember how she looked, that she had great lighting, better than mine, and that she had that necklace on. So people remember mostly what they saw. Next in the order is how you came across, how you made them feel, your tone, your voice, the impression that you made. And it's something like 7% is what they recall of what you actually said, the content, the actual story. So that's why the work that I do is so critically important, because we know that they're mostly going to remember what you looked like and how you made them feel, not so much what you said. So I really focus on how to make the most of that 7%, right? So it's about understanding news value, and news value is really the intersection between what you want to say and what people are already talking about. Because you need to fit into an existing conversation. You can't just stand up at the mountaintop and scream what you think is important. People will not hear you. So news value, and really being at that intersection of what you want to say and what the world is already talking about. And then focusing on key messages. You really cannot have more than 3 ideas for any single communication. And it should be the same 3 ideas for at least a period of time, whether you are giving a print interview, you're drafting an email, you're sitting down for a podcast interview, because you need people every time they hear from you as a subject matter expert, every time they hear from your brand, they need the same key themes to be resonating over and over again. And eventually they will understand what you stand for. So for me, that is how we make the most of that tiny, tiny percentage, which is the actual content of what you're saying.
Love that. Thank you for that. Amazing. Seth, comments on yeah, I'm putting you on the spot, but I promise we're gonna go in reverse in a minute. But Seth, yes.
It's fine. I'm just way out of my league here. Jeez. I'm listening to these two, awesome people, and I'm like, Mr. Marble Mouth over here that likes to ramble and not put pauses and uses ums and ahs all the time. And I hear Julie, and I'm like, there was not an like, any of that stuff in there. I'm like, okay, intimidated.
So, okay, so
Yeah.
Seth, but you know what? There's something to that though, right? There's
Yeah,
something.
it's genuineness. It's genuineness, and I'm not saying that Julie's not genuine, but there's a
No,
way
I
to.
mean the opposite of
Yeah.
of like your approach to it. So like,
Yeah.
from there's like just being genuine, I think is just what it comes down to be, just who you are at all times.
Yeah.
But let's talk about kind of media and marketing, if you will.
Mhm.
Come back to public relations shortly, but like here's everybody out here on the call. They've come out. This is a form of media and marketing for some people.
Mhm.
But like, there's a lot out there. There is like
There's
so
almost too much out
to
there.
do.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do and where do you start? And like, if you took Julie's suggestions and you took Rosemary's suggestions on content and Julie's suggestions on like, quote unquote acting, then what? Where do you go?
Exactly.
What do you do?
A lot of it comes down to, I mean, let's stick with the whole communication side of things. I mean, yeah, you can build a website, put your videos up there where you're talking from the mountain, hoping that people are going to listen. Not always the best idea, but you can also get on podcasts. You can guest on podcasts. You could have your message ready to go. You talk to someone like Rosemary and say, all right, let's find those 3 points that I want to highlight on every single podcast I'm on. So I've done more than 270 episodes of Entrepreneur's Enigma, my entrepreneur podcast. And I've had some great interviews that have been way more than 3 points. I can tell you that right now. I'm hearing 3 points. I'm like, wow, these guys have gone way over. But it's a very good point that most people will only retain 3 or less of that interview unless they go back and listen to it again and again and again. But I find that if you have those 3 points you want to get across, and yeah, there's tangents and stuff like that on podcasts that are ancillary to the actual 3 points. It really works out nicely. So, and I also tell my clients, especially with the breadth of social media out there, pick one to focus on mostly. So if you're B2B, be on LinkedIn. Focus on LinkedIn. Yeah, you can dabble on Blue Sky, dabble on Twitter, dabble on Instagram, but focus on one. And also, I can't harp on this enough, own your content. If you're gonna write a nice 1,000-word post on LinkedIn, put it first on your blog or talk about it on a podcast first that you control. Because LinkedIn gods, they will, if they're fickle, if they don't like the way you winked in a video one day, I mean, it's literally sometimes that's stupid that you winked or you did something weird on LinkedIn. It isn't even not even bad. You're off for like 3 days because you're communicating with tech support about like why was I kicked off and they don't even know why. So own your content. Always direct people back to your owned media. If you don't do that and you're kicked off of Instagram, which is even easier to get kicked off of, trust me, it's happened to me. And I didn't do anything bad. It's happened to me. Lose your password, whatever. You need to own your content. So people can say, where did Seth go? Well, let me go over to his blog, his website, his podcast, And I can still get my Seth fix if you dare want a Seth fix. I think I answered your question.
It
Or
does,
rambled.
and it does, and it's actually really good advice. And just I want to just put a little plug because you said the word ownership to content. I mean, I'm an intellectual property attorney. Just going to put a little disclaimer out there. Everybody should really own their content by filing a copyright, a trademark, or a patent. So just put that, public service announcement, protect your shit for sure. Rosemary, let's come to you again. So you do a lot of public relations, strategic communications, maybe like for the people that don't even know what that is. There are people like they're maybe trying to understand the differences. Can you kind of break it down a little bit?
Absolutely. And I will add on to what Seth just said, because there is a model for communication that I did not invent, but that I lean on heavily. It's called the PESO model: paid, earned, shared, owned. It's a way to look at the ever-changing media ecosystem that's out there. And Seth was talking about the owned aspect of the PESO model. And I could not agree more that who you are as a subject matter expert has to show up on your owned channels in the same way that it shows up if you're giving a media interview or you're running an advertisement, whatever the case may be. It has to be consistent, and the volume has to be turned up across paid, earned, shared, and owned. And I know not everyone can do paid. That's essentially advertising or sponsored content. Not everyone has a budget for that, especially startups. But as you make your way through storytelling and thinking about the different opportunities that you have to reach people, that model is a really great way to frame your strategy. And sometimes I have clients who come, so David, to your question, sometimes I have clients that come to us that say, the one thing we can't do is earned media. We need you to identify all the journalists, all the gatekeepers, pitch stories to them, build relationships with them on our behalf, and make sure that they are covering us, that they are including us in relevant stories. That's something my own marketing people can't do. They don't have the time for it. That's what we want you to do. And that's fine, because it is a unique skill, trying to convince people who you can't control, you can't tell them what to do, to try to convince them that you are worthy of being covered. And that goes back to the news value that I mentioned in my last answer. That's great, but we can't operate in a vacuum. We need you, like I said, to show up in the same way on your LinkedIn, on your website. Your expertise in the marketplace doesn't live just in earned. It has to live across channels. And one thing that is different that has changed recently is we are seeing journalists now actually want to make it look like they discovered you when they cover you. So you need to be discoverable, right? So if they can't find you on social media because you don't like TikTok and you think social media is a time suck, they may not cover you because they can't find you there. They want to know that you have a platform, that you care so much about your subject matter expertise, that you are reaching people across the PESO model. And another thing that's really interesting is even when I'm pitching a journalist and I'm saying, you ought to talk to this person, I see that you're covering these topics, here's their unique point of view, why they would be a good source for you. Sometimes they will actually make it look like they've, in their coverage, that they found the person. And this happens with, we just had a client on the Jennifer Hudson show. They actually did find our client on social media because he created some content that was already going viral, and then a big influencer shared it. So that's a situation where they could say, this guy's content was going viral and we invited him onto the show. But I've also had several clients on the Kelly Clarkson show, and we've pitched them and they make it look like Kelly stumbled upon them. And don't tell Kelly Clarkson or her producers I told you this. They make it look like they stumbled upon it on Instagram. Isn't this person interesting and fun? And we're going to now interview them and we're going to like their Instagram post live on TV. So I think that's a really good way to understand how the different media channels, the peso model, are actually feeding off of each other, and why it's so important to care and feed all of them equally.
Interesting. So Seth, I actually like the different kind of points of view. So Seth says to maybe pick one, and kind of go strong and hard on it, dabble a little bit. You think people should go strong and hard on all, or as many as they can?
I think that Seth is right that if you only have time for one, clean up your own house, get your own
Yeah.
house in order first, and then start thinking about third-party channels that you can tap. So ideally, yes, in 2025, where I think Julie mentioned people's attention spans are super short, news cycles are turning over faster than ever, you can't be dependent on earned media to get your point across. I still think it's super powerful, even for people who are out there screaming that legacy media are dead and fake news. They're still focused on what the media are saying. So it's not going away. It's changing. It's not going away. It's still important. But if you haven't, if your own house is not in order first, then you shouldn't focus on that yet.
Love that. Excellent way of putting that. Julie, comments on all of this?
So I am a solopreneur. Not to be redundant, but that's a business of one
Yeah.
that that I feel often. So I will echo Seth and Rosemary. I was curious how Rosemary was going to respond to that, because I have worked with strategy coaches. This isn't me saying this, because as much as I may be good at what I do, what you've hopefully seen today, I don't know everything about a business and all of that stuff. So I've had to learn a lot of that. And part of that was having people to understand specifically what I do, who my ideal client is, and where they are. So that's kind of what I have been focusing on, particularly at the beginning of this year. So for me, I have focused very strategically and very intentionally what I'm doing on LinkedIn. And I can put my contact in here, but anyone that's out here, I would love for you to connect with me on LinkedIn. David will have some information on how to connect with us after the show that he'll send to everyone. But in any case, I am on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. And I do say that with a little gulp in my throat, but I am on there. I won't tell you because why. But anyway, so there's I have a limited amount of time and resources, but mostly time. So how do I do that? I'm fine doing stuff on camera. You have to repurpose stuff. There's lots of stuff behind how you can do all of that. Not creating stuff over, like new stuff all the time. That's the biggest thing that I stopped doing. But repurposing things, but creating what I have for LinkedIn and then putting that onto Instagram and Facebook, because a good number of my clients do come to me particularly through Facebook, some through Instagram, but a lot of my work now is coming more through LinkedIn, just because I'm being very focused about and intentional and strategic about how I'm doing that.
Excellent. Let me stick on you for a minute. I just want to let everybody know, I forgot to mention, please, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. There will be some time later where you can ask them live, but put them in the chat. Maybe Rosemary, Seth, and Julie will see it and they'll answer you right away. But if not, I promise we'll get to it, or we'll try to get to it. Julie, sticking on you, and this is a question for everybody, but maybe you can take it first. Okay, so how does because you mentioned ideal client, I think people probably want to know, like, who is the ideal client for you? And then what does it look like to work with you? Like, how does that work? And again, it's for everybody now. Julie will go first, Seth, you'll go second, Rosemary, you're third, but who's your ideal client and what does it mean what does that look like, the engagement to work with you?
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about that, and I did have some notes here because I wanted to be able to answer that succinctly. So what it's like to work with me is I touched on this a little bit before. I do work with I have a range of people who I work with. Specifically on this call, I listen to a few of you speaking. This is mostly smaller business owners or people who have nonprofits and are supporting nonprofits. So I work with CEOs and business owners to shape and share their stories succinctly in whatever the time amount is, that the time allotment that you have, whatever that speaking opportunity might be. That might be a pitch. I call myself a pitch coach, which I am, but I do not pretend to come up with your content. Where my expertise lies is in how you're sharing that you have that sticky moment right up front that connects your product or service or the community you serve with why it matters to either investors or customers or consumers. And those are two very different things. Sharing your why, as I did in my introduction, is not something I often do when I'm talking to clients. In fact, I seldom do it when I'm talking to clients. It's something that I do in speaking engagements and when I take a deeper dive. It's probably goes without saying. However, with your business, your why, I stand behind this. Your why is what drives you and what you do. So it's always important. The strategy of when and how you, and the moments that you share those why is share that why is another thing. And I think Rosemary can probably talk a little bit about that as well. So I help people get your content very clear and concise for those moments. And in addition to that, I work with, I'm in the process of putting together an event for entrepreneurs and small business owners where I can be kind of a hot seat pitch coach, where I can listen to your pitch and I can give you some feedback on it, because I find that that's something that a lot of small businesses need. And I have done that. I have worked as a pitch coach with Founder Institute, which if you don't know them, they're a fabulous place they're all over the world, but they have offices all over the world to help startups and all of that. So I think that's something that's valuable. And in addition to that, once you start to build out, I do work with teams with getting their message concisely and confidently communicated to whoever their audience is. And if you have organizations that are looking for a guest speaker to talk about all of this stuff with tangible ways that you can come away with what to say and how to say it in a way that connects with your audience, I do that as well. Does that answer
Amazing.
questions?
Thank you. Yeah, that's perfect. Seth, what about you? How does what is a typical client for you? And what does it mean like to work with you? What does that mean?
Well, you get me, and for better or for worse, you know, you can deal with me on my craziness. But I mainly deal with the small mid-sized companies because they're young, they're scrappy. I do a lot of work with the Founder Institute as well, and startups, and kind of getting them online, getting them found, you know, getting them on a podcast or having them develop their own podcasts to help brand themselves online. I mean, working with me, you work with me one-on-one, you work with me and my team, depending on what's needed, and we have a blast doing it. Really, I try to make it as much fun and educational as possible, and less pulling teeth. So
Love that. Yeah, that's great.
pulling
Rosemary,
teeth is no fun.
yeah, agreed. Rosemary, what about you?
But I didn't mention here that most of our clients are in the healthcare, education, technology, financial services, and nonprofit spaces. As a communicator, I hesitate sometimes to talk about what we don't do, but the only thing we really don't do is fashion, beauty, and entertainment. So pretty much everything else. And for us, we're a team of 8 people. So we're a boutique agency. So I do have a team. We are mostly entrenched in healthcare and education and nonprofit. Those are our 3 biggest sectors. And for us, the ideal client is someone who is willing to think about PR as a long-term strategy. When we are working to establish authority and to engage influencers, it's not usually something you flip a switch and it's on. That would be that paid circle in that peso model. So we say to clients, stick with us for at least 90 days to build a foundation to start to see traction. And then beyond that, we are hopeful that clients are at a stage, if they are a startup or an entrepreneur, that they're at a stage where they're ready to invest in their credibility. Because early on in launching a business, you need people to believe in your concept, to believe that you are the right entity and the right people to bring it to life. And that's what we bring. That's what public relations brings to storytelling, because it's not just your own channels, it's the earned media. People are talking about you. People who don't have to talk about you are talking about you. And that third party credibility can be absolutely priceless for a young business that's just getting started and needs people to believe in what it's doing. So those are some of the things that we are looking for when we're looking at prospective clients. I will say something I started in 2024, which I am absolutely loving, is I had an entrepreneur who came to me and said, can I pay you, just Rosemary, to be my coach and meet with me once a week and coach me? I have someone who does marketing, but I really want to be more of a thought leader. And will you work with me on who will be connecting with, journalists you might introduce me to, ways that you think my story can be more compelling? And I'm so excited to share that I said to her last year, what I really want for you is to get a TEDx talk. You have an idea worth sharing. And I feel like if you could get that one TEDx talk that's recorded and shared by TED, it would be a great foundational piece for you, for us to point to, and for you to accomplish everything that you're trying to accomplish. Her business is a profit-making business, but it's based on a mission. And she was like, well, yeah, I've tried a couple times and I haven't been successful. And I said, no, we're going to make this happen. This is a goal for me to make this happen for you. And I'm really excited to share that she just found out last week that the application that I helped her write and that I helped her prepare for, she was selected, and it's at Boston University. And she actually started her career in teaching in Boston. So it's such a perfect fit. So I've been thinking to myself, how do I get that coaching idea out there more for thought leaders? Because I would love to do more of that. It's been really rewarding.
I'm on mute. I love that. That's amazing. That's pretty good. But let me stick on you for a little bit. There's people on this call, you heard them, entrepreneurs, startups. Cost is always an issue. I mean, I am a big proponent of you got to spend money to make money. That's just how, and in my world, that means marketing and travel and, things that clients aren't paying for, but that I just have to do on my own, but that's just how you kind of grow your business. Can we talk about cost? I mean, we don't have to talk about exact numbers, but maybe we can talk about I mean, I think it kind of goes without saying that this is worth it, but let's try to dig into that a little bit. Because of the makeup of the folks on the phone. And by the way, there are some larger companies just from who I know and recognize. But cost is always a concern, whether you're small or large. So maybe we can dig into that. It's for all three of you, but let's start with Rosemary first, if we can.
Sure. So one of the funny things about public relations is when I started in this business in the 90s, I quickly learned that there was this baseline retainer that everyone talked about and knew. And so every prospective client would say, I want to pay that amount of money. Guess what? It hasn't changed. It's still that same number. So I'll talk numbers. I'm not shy. $5,000 a month is what people think that they should be paying for public relations. And sometimes we take an engagement for $5,000 a month. I will never take something that I think we can't be successful. So I really want to get to know the client, understand what their expectations are, and come up together with a scope of work that can be achieved for that number of hours. But it makes it hard for me to attract talent and to retain talent when clients don't want to spend more than they were spending in the 90s. And they don't ever want me to. I have some clients that we've had for, I work with Cigna as one of my largest clients. We've been with them for 18 years. So we need to be able over 18 years to adjust our pricing occasionally because I have to give people raises and we have to adapt our business. So I would say $5,000 a month is a very known baseline number. Some of our clients are spending 10 if they want us to really be aggressive in one part of that peso model. We have some clients that want all of that proactive communication, all the strategy, looking across channels, and they're also facing crises. So we have to be ready in the event that something terrible, these are big global companies that bad things happen, they just do. No one's perfect. So we also need to be reacting. So it's the proactive communication, telling the stories we want to tell, and the reactive, making sure we're ready and we're on it in the event that something happens. And when we are operating at that scale with a global profit-making entity, we are north of $20,000 a month.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Please go for it.
The last thing I was going to say is the coaching piece is new. And that, since I didn't say the name of the company, I will tell you how much she's paying. It's $1,000 a month.
Thank you so much for your transparency. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you. And that's, bravo to that. Seth, any comment here? Julie or
Yeah.
Yak?
Yeah, I'll be transparent too. I mean, the websites, basic website, 5-10 pages, WordPress, rocking and rolling out the doors around 6,500 on up, depending on how complex and how whiz bang moments you have on the site. SEO goes anywhere from 2K on up, depending on how broad you want to go. And SEO is changing constantly, so it's a lot of research, it's a lot of reading. You're paying for my 17 years of experience in the industry as much as you're paying for Google deciding they want to change something yesterday. Like, seriously, it happens all the time. And then the podcast coaching on the other side, I like to joke. I'm cheaper than a well-priced lawyer. I'm more expensive than a well-priced shrink.
I love that.
I love that. My wife didn't get it at first, but literally I'm $250 per session. Usually I suggest 4 sessions, and then I have a deal right now that's always going to be a deal. You pay for 4 sessions up front, you get the 5th for free, because why not? I mean, at that point we're having fun. And they're about an hour long, session. So if we're having fun, usually the first session is usually getting to know each other anyhow. So I'm like, you pay for 4 up front, you'll get that 5th one for free, because we're usually at that point we're on a flow and I want to keep going. So
Love that. Thank you, Seth. Julie, no pressure.
Yeah. So full disclaimer, I'm not a therapist or a lawyer and I thankfully okay, that made me tear up. That was funny. I usually say that in my disclaimer because when I do tell personal stories, I like to tell people that my method is not therapy, but it is therapeutic and I do help people connect the dots. So okay, moving on from that. So this is funny. This 5K number is the golden ticket. It's out, or not, maybe not the golden ticket, but the golden number that is coming up. And I work in that range, and I will throw out what I do for 5K. That's generally what the minimum that I like to get when I'm working long-term with someone. Now, I'm going to say it that way. When I say minimum, don't let that scare you, because I do a little bit of what Rosemary does, and I do a little bit about what Seth does. So when I'm working with people, I work over a minimum of 3 to 5 months is really what I like to do. If you're talking about those things about getting over your fear of speaking, it doesn't happen overnight. That's something that you have to step into. You have to be transparent and candid with me about what's getting in your way. I help you work through that. Again, not therapy, but storytelling strategies that actors use for how we step into a role. That's my approach. It's fun, it's insightful, it's engaging, but depending on, some people need it and some people don't. All right. But my work is curated. So in the same way that Seth says he does, 5 sessions for, I guess that's like $1,000, right? And if you pay for it all up front, that's basically how I work as well. I frame it a little bit differently, but that's really my price range. And when I say those sessions, because here's the thing, and I'm sure this is true for all of us, we're not 21 years old. We didn't just become influencers on Instagram 5 minutes ago, and we're going to cure all your problems for you. So you are investing in a lot of experience and a lot of value when working with any of us. So, and that takes some time. I don't just pop on and video for 60 minutes and we kind of have fun and we work together. There's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes. It's my job when I'm working with you, if it's a one-on-one situation, I have a role of understanding you, your business, and also who your audience is. So I spend a lot of time doing that research on both of those. And then also additionally, there's follow-up that happens in between by email, by text. People call me and leave messages. I leave voice messages for people to kind of give them a boost. All of that stuff happens across the time of working together. So where does that 5K number come in? That comes in over the course of 4 to 5 months of working together. And I work out payment plans with people. If it's too much all at once, we can space that out so that there's payment with that. But that's generally what I can tell you most professionals are charging for kind of what we're doing. I have done my research and I realize it is a chunk of change for folks, but it's an investment that is worthwhile.
And that's the point. I think that's kind of why I brought up this question. I mean, I have clients that will spend, thousands on, on patents, trademarks, or copyrights. Great, but like, then what, right? Like, this is like money well spent. There's like, these are the people that can kind of make it happen. So, I'm a big believer of this, as you can see. I want to give some time for people to ask questions live. So if you have a question, please raise your hand, and you can kind of ask it live. But in the meantime, kind of while we're waiting a little bit, there's a lot of people learn great things from the mistakes of others, right? That's just how we are as humans. Can you share a little bit about what mistakes you all have seen? And then we'll get into some questions. Seth, we'll start with you.
From the fun. There you go. Yeah. I mean, I can talk about the mistakes I've made. I mean, that's one of my pitches with the podcast coaching is learn from my 15 years of mistakes. I mean, it's a nascent, small, I'm not sure if nascent's the right word, but it's a new industry, even though it's a new old industry. It's been around for about 20 years. And I've made every mistake in the book. I've launched podcasts that fizzled after 3 episodes. I've done ones that have gone literally on 270 episodes, like keep going. And I've seen people make the same mistakes. And the best thing to do is try and learn to make them less than the person you're learning from. Kind of my key there is like learn from our mistakes. We've all made them. We're all human. And then, even if, I'm doting on Julie here, how well rehearsed she is. I'm sure when she started, there's lots of ums and ahs in there. And every once in a while, an and ah pops out every once in a while. It's going to happen. And one of my biggest tips I have for anyone who's doing podcasts, just get started. Like you can sit on your butt and dwell on, oh my God, I can't get this out. Sometimes you just gotta get started. And the first episode sucks. It always does. But still put it out there for the world to hear and all its like disgusting glory. And every episode since will get better. Just like any, you make mistakes on social media. And then sometimes they're bad and you have to go see Rosemary. Like, oh my God, crisis communication quickly, But hopefully they're not that bad. And you can recover. You can always recover from stuff.
I love that. Thank you, Seth. Rosemary.
So this is an interesting question because it reminds me, we do media training also, which I haven't even talked about today. And that is helping people prepare for delivering their story to the media, but also in the event that you're dealing with a difficult situation and they're asking really tough questions that you don't want to answer, how you survive something like that. And I remember one of the examples that I used to use in media training is when George Bush was asked what mistakes he made after 9/11, and he refused to acknowledge any mistakes and really stumbled over that answer. And some people have talked about this in the chat, the importance of being humble and human is really important because people don't believe you if you aren't. So I think it is really important to be willing to admit your mistakes. So I need to admit one, not just talk about other people's mistakes. Gosh, I think over the years, probably, one of the hardest things for me as an entrepreneur with a team has been attracting and retaining the best people. And sometimes we've made really bad hiring decisions and I didn't act on them fast enough. And then they turned into high drama situations that ultimately impacted our culture or our reputation because the person walks away also feeling bad and is out in the world telling people about their experience. So I think that I probably should have been more calculated in how I dealt with some of those bad hiring decisions. And maybe, I don't know about less human, but give less space for those things to go bad. And similarly, we've had, in 21 years, I can count on one hand how many times I've said goodbye to a client. And I've learned in the beginning, I didn't say goodbye fast enough. When something's toxic, it's not going to get better. And again, that pollutes the culture of the company and leaves everyone feeling terrible. So, that's a mistake that I think I have definitely learned from. If something's not working with an employee or not working with a client, it's better to part ways before it gets worse.
Love that. I resonate with all of that. Yeah, it's good people are hard to find, and yeah, sometimes you need to fire a client and not wait for the client to fire you.
And yes, and it's okay to say that it's not a failure on the part of the agency, and it's not a failure on the part of the client or the employee. It just didn't work.
Yep.
And that's okay. And we can all walk away acknowledging it just didn't work.
Love that.
Save some heartache.
Thank you, Julie.
So I'll piggyback on some of that stuff, mistakes I made. So I actually started my business. I formed my LLC in 2019, and things took off like a rocket for me in 2019. I had just come off a lot of work in off Broadway, and I was ready to go. My husband and I had made a decision that our kids were all in high school, and newsflash for anyone who's approaching that or in that, that's when your kids really need you. So he traveled a lot and I needed to be around more. That was a big impetus and I still do a little bit of stuff, but in any case, so things really took off for me. And then we all know what happened on March 13th of 2020. I had multiple gigs booked all over the country with Fortune 100 companies, and everything came to a screeching halt. I had to obviously pivot, worst word of COVID that I'd like to let go of, but it's true, and rethink what I was doing. Now you might think, oh, well, you're an actor, you're on camera, you can do what you do virtually. And I do, a lot of my work now is virtual because I work with clients all over the world. However, being in the room with people is really what I love to do. So I had to rethink all of that. The mistake that I made was that I didn't get enough help on the business side of that and how to do that with strategy, with some of what Rosemary is talking about. And I'll also say with Seth that podcasting is one of the quickest and most effective ways to get in front of your audiences. I do a lot of guesting on podcasts, so I'm a big fan of podcasts, getting your story out there. But so when you see that you are needing those resources, for me, that was the business side of things. I didn't know what really I was doing as a business person. So once everything came to a halt in 2020 and corporations decided they were going to start having their HR departments do what I do, which, by the way, there's not really someone in HR departments that was from the stage that teaches storytelling and communication the way I do. That's my pitch for that. But in any case, then what happened was, so between 2020 and 2023, I was in and out. I was doing some voiceover work and what have you, but I just didn't have a business plan, a strategy, all the numbers that go into revenue and all those business things. So what I did was in 2023, 2024, I took a couple of business classes. I would encourage anyone to look into any resources that are available to you through the SBA, that's small business resources. David does a ton of work with places locally. I actually worked with Rising Tide Capital, and I took what was essentially 2 business courses that kind of taught me the nuts and bolts of my business. And that was, okay, 5 years after I had actually launched my business. So there was that, and then continually getting more support now on where I see taking that business class made me realize where my holes were in the actual business side of things. And a lot of that right now is, like I said, with strategy. So I am being very intentional about that now in 2025. Get your support when you need it, and be honest with yourself about where those holes are. And the last thing I'll say that both that Rosemary particularly talked about is not everybody is going to be your customer or your client. Not every investor is going to be your investor. Listen to yourself, listen to the voice inside yourself when you kind of like you're pretty sure that that's a thing, but you keep pushing through anyway. Don't do it. If you feel like it's not the right moment there and the right person, there's so many other people out there available that are your customers and your clients and investors that are willing to help you.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you so much for that. And now patiently waiting, Roxanne, you're first. Go for it.
Hey guys, how are y'all? First of all, thank you for all of your time and all of your insights. This has been incredible. In fact, I've been taking diligent notes, and someone reached out to me to ask for my notes. So that just goes to show that you guys have so much valuable insight. The thing that I wanted to ask you about is that I have a story, and this is kind of a 2-parter. So the first part is my backstory. So like I said, I help high achieving professionals, help them through things like performance, proving, emotional barricades. And part of my story is heavily personal, that my family may or may not be exactly thrilled about me sharing. So wondering, have you ever had to approach a conversation like that to say, hey, to tell you guys, I have no problem telling you guys. I came from a family where my mother was an alcoholic for decades. When I was in high school, she was on her deathbed with a 5% chance of living. Got a liver transplant, came back to life. Then a life-changing moment happened in 2017 when she passed away unexpectedly. These are things about my family that they may not want shared publicly. And I know that because we hid it back then. That was the emotional armor that we put on. So didn't share that a lot growing up. The second part is, and I'm doing it now, is rushing through my story. Just because I get that sweaty feeling, thinking like, I don't want people to feel sorry for me, or I don't want them to feel like I'm trying to gain attention. I know that's a mindset thing. Part of it's fear. But just looking for some insights from you guys on the tips and tricks, or if you guys have even hit some of these obstacles.
First of all, can I just say, I know the question wasn't for me, but thank you for sharing. We appreciate your question. Julie, Rosemary, Seth, who wants to start or take it?
I could jump in. This is absolutely in my wheelhouse. And Roxanne, I actually heard your intro whenever I was introducing myself, and I took a note to connect with you. I get it. I mean, if you heard my intro, that this is very much about what I have done, and we share similarities in kind of with family members. It took me a while to connect, to actually start to voice that story. I did it in different ways, and I can talk about that kind of offline if you want to reach out to me. But what I do, I'll tell you very succinctly, what I do now is kind of what I did on this call. I frame that in the I. I use I. You know, I don't speak, and when I've been on podcasts, and I've been on podcasts where I've shared my story, I don't speak for, and I say very clearly, I'm not speaking for anyone else in my family. Everybody has their own experiences, and this was my journey. Because why, and this is that's why I'm on the podcast, is they want to know I have a signature talk that's based on stepping into your story with courage and clarity, and I share my story. So that's part of what I do now. And my approach to that is that this is a big part of my business. My signature talk is a big part of my business. And for the family members that I have that are maybe not as comfortable talking about those things, certainly publicly, I respect that. That's their journey. My journey is mine. And yes, part of that has come through lots of therapy and kind of stepping into my own story so that I can help other people do the same.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Rosemary, do you want to?
I have
comment?
a couple thoughts, yeah, to add to that. And again, thank you for sharing that story. And for anyone who was having a reaction when Julie shared her story, when you shared yours, again, that's the oxytocin that the brain is producing, and it gets your attention. I'm not focusing on anything else. I'm paying attention to you. So I would urge you to stop thinking about, I don't want people to feel sorry for me, and start understanding that being human and sharing that story is how they will connect with you. You're not, like, just even remove that phrase from your vernacular, because you know that's not what you're trying to do, right? You're not trying to make people feel sorry for you. So that's one thought. I think, I was talking to an editor for People magazine a couple years ago about, and she covers crime, and these stories can be very sensational. And she was telling me that a lot of the interview subjects are anxious to tell their story because they're traumatized, they've been through something awful, maybe the person who did it to them is still out there, and they want to do everything in their power to feel better. And so sharing their story feels worth it to achieve the end that they're trying to achieve. And then sometimes there might be a young victim involved. And a few years later, they'll call her and say, can you take that story down? Because my child is now applying to college or looking for their first job, and this story keeps coming up. And she can't do that. It's journalism. You can't erase it. It happened. So I think one exercise that can be really useful when you are navigating which stories to tell, I love what Julie said about make it yours and how it made you feel, as opposed to dragging all the other characters along with you into the narrative. I think that's a great way to handle it. But also think about the risk reward analysis. I know this is risky for me to tell this story, and is it worth the reward? And you may think, like, I had a really difficult personal story that I decided to share through a spoken word event that happens here in our community. And the first year I wrote it and rehearsed it, I wasn't ready. Once I actually practiced it and thought about what happens when I stand up there in front of hundreds of people who know me and say this, and it wasn't worth the risk. The next year I auditioned and I was selected, and I'm so glad that I did it. So that risk reward can also be helpful as a tool.
Amazing. Thank you. Thanks, Roxanne. Thanks, Rosemary. Okay, let's go to Tammy. Hold on, Tammy. Hold on, Roxanne. Oh, no, hold on. Yeah, okay. Hi, Tammy. You're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, start
Okay,
that
great.
story all over again. Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just wanted to start out just thanking everyone. Like Roxanne, I have taken tons of notes, really benefited from attending this. So thanks to all the presenters, and thank you, David, for offering this. Roxanne, just wanted to tell you from my perspective, your story didn't make me feel sorry for you. Your story made me feel you were brave. That's what I got from that. Wanted to ask the group, is there a structure or a process that you would recommend when we are telling our story? Say for a 30-second pitch, a longer discussion, do you have any sort of formats or guidelines that you provide your clients to help them put their content into a structure that works?
Love that
I can
question.
do this.
Seth, yes, I was gonna
I,
call on you first. Go for it.
yeah, I got this. And it's kind of a cliche in a way, but practice either in front of your dog or in front of the mirror. Or your spouse, but everyone says it's harder when it's your spouse or your partner because you know they're judging you. The dog doesn't judge you, the mirror doesn't judge you. And that's one of the biggest things before I go on a podcast. When I'm guesting on someone else's podcast and I think I know where they're going to go with it, you never do. Being a former journalist, I'm very clear that you will not get the questions ahead of time. Now, I give a hint. You listen to Entrepreneurs Enigma ahead of time, you're going to get the 3 questions. Do your research, But literally, I don't rehearse those shows. I go into because I have I don't know, 20, 25 years of journalism experience kind of in that space, so I can kind of wing it a little bit more. But I always go in front of my dog. Best rehearsal partner I have ever had. She sits there, listens, licks her lips occasionally. That does get a little distracting. But or the mirror is like the best technique I have. I know Rosemary and Julie probably have more concrete steps. I expect that from them because they're more that way. But I'm always cliche it up, go in front of the mirror and just practice what you think they're gonna ask. And you're prepared.
Love that. Rosemary, Julie, do you want to comment?
I think
Rosemary.
Julie probably has a lot to say on this topic.
Julie.
Well, I don't know, Rosemary, we could have coffee for hours. So, what I'll say about that, Tammy, and thank you for your question. I'll speak specifically to an introduction. I actually have a whole half-day thing that I do with groups of people for these introductions. So I'll share with you the 3, and you can look at it as 30 seconds, and I'll give you the example of mine, so make it concrete. So you want to have your introduce yourself politely. What you do. Hi, my name is Julie Campbell. I'm the founder of Center Stage Connections. The second thing you want to do is you want to connect what you do with why it matters to your audience. I've curated everything I've learned from my life on the stage as an actor, writer, and storyteller. And there's very intentional kind of oh, you're an actor, which I live right outside of New York City. So newsflash, being an actor in New Jersey is no big deal. So any case, I've curated everything I've learned from my life on the stage as an actor, writer, and storyteller. And 3, you want to set the expectations for the people in the room. You think of this as like a little movie trailer that it's a sticky nugget that makes them want to learn more about what you do. So you don't spill all the tea, but you give them just enough that they're like, oh, I'm interested to hear more about that. And the second part of that sentence, but it's really 3 things. Hi, my name is Julie Campbell. I'm the founder of Center Stage Connections. 2, I've curated everything I've learned from my life on the stage as an actor, writer, and storyteller. And 3, I teach business people how to communicate using those same principles from the stage. That's actually okay, Seth, thank you. I wish my kids adored me that much. But in any case, that is under 30 seconds. It's probably 20 to 25 seconds. I have a 1-minute version of that, and I have a 1.5, and I have a 3-minute version, which I kind of gave at the beginning of this. So you want to have, if you can get, and as I said, I work with as a pitch coach, the hardest thing to do is to tell your story in 1 minute. That is not easy, especially when you're looking for money. But it can be done. So hopefully that helps.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. And waiting patiently is Mary. Hi, from Singapore.
Hi. Hi. So I've actually asked this in the comment that I am a former aircraft engineer at Singapore Airlines, and now I am already 6 years doing PR and communications. However, every time that I am even though I know what I'm about to present and I know that I am knowledgeable about to what about to something that I need to communicate to people, I tend to, rattle when I'm talking to business owners or executives, and my brain is all over the place to the point that and I was like, oh my God, what's happening to me? And then after that, the regret moment of my life. So I just need an advice, or is there any, have you experienced that before and how did you overcome it? Because I badly need that one right now. So I
Well,
would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Who wants to take that?
I can start.
Rosemary, you'll start first. Seth will take you afterwards.
So, as someone who's been doing PR for 30 plus years, and I've only ever done PR in my career, and I have a degree in journalism with a concentration in PR, I really could not have more credentials for what I do, and a track record and a reputation. And I still have clients, prospective clients, and actual clients that will question my authority, question my background, question if I'm the right fit. So you should know going into those situations that it's not just about how much experience you have, it's just what people do. And it says more about them that they're doing it than it does about you. So right off the top, just remember that. And I liked what Julie said earlier about you won't win every opportunity. You won't win over every investor. And that's true, and that's okay. And this is something I still have to remind myself of all these years later. I was listening to a podcast. Julia Louis-Dreyfus does a podcast called Wiser Than Me with women who are older than she is. And she was interviewing Carol Burnett, who I think is 90 or in her 90s, an entertainer. And Carol Burnett was talking about how she had to learn over the years that she wasn't going to get every part that she auditioned for. And she would go into every one thinking, I'm going to get this because I have confidence and I am so talented and I've gotten so many other great roles. Oh, I'm going to get this. And then she would be devastated when she didn't get it. And she would start analyzing, what was it? What did I do wrong? Was I not funny enough? Was I not strong enough? And then she realized when she was walking out and seeing all the other people who were auditioning for that same role, that one of those people got it. And it just wasn't her turn. And that's my mantra. When something doesn't go the way that I want it to, when I'm pitching a prospective client, it was someone else's turn. It just wasn't my turn. And I think that's really important to remember. So I'm not telling you how to get over your nerves in a tactical way, but I'm reassuring you that we all feel this way when we're pitching, that some pitches go well, some pitches don't go well, and sometimes it just wasn't your turn.
Brilliant. Love that. Thank you for that, Rosemary. Excellent. Seth, did you want to say something?
Yeah, honestly, I would just say it happens to the best of us. I was a journalist for 6 years, a local beat reporter, like cop reporter. Nothing's more scary than getting called up at 3 o'clock in the morning by the chief of police saying, "Get your ass down to the police station right now. I have to talk to you about a union dispute." Nothing's worse than that. You go down there and you're like, Not only is this guy probably older than you, credentialed, he's got a freaking gun and a jail cell and all that stuff. And it's like, yeah, there's laws that kind of protect me there, but it's intimidating. And you never quite get over the ums and ahs and nerves, but just know that they put their pants on the same way you do. They might add a gun to those pants, which is a little scary. But just remember that everyone is putting the pants on the same way. That, the high-powered executive that's the head of a Fortune 100 company might have not slept well that night, might have had his kid jump in bed and drive the dog nuts. That was this morning for me. But make me have to take the dog for a walk first thing in the morning, which I don't normally do. So like that thing, everyone is human, and you just kind of go into it saying like, all right, this person's human. Breathe. Just breathe. And that's the hardest thing is you'd be surprised how much you don't breathe in some of those times. It's like, you just have to breathe. Easier said than done.
Love that also.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, so we are way over time, but I think it was well worth it. Final thoughts from Seth. Final thoughts.
Thank you for having me. It's kind of a very broad statement. Find me, you get my podcast. Oh, it's reversed. Whatever. You see my icons, scan my business card down there. I used to be better at this. Down there. And then my ebooks over here, it's free. I mean, you give me your email, but other than that, it's free. So you can tell me to
Amazing.
kick bricks afterwards. So
Thank you, Seth. Final parting words, advice, something, Rosemary?
So my final parting words are going to be make the most of your final parting words. I'm going to be very meta. So something we do in media training is we do mock interviews. And a journalist, I've been doing this a really long time, as I've already said, just about every single journalist will ask you at the end of an interview, is there anything else my audience should know? And I can't tell you how many times in media training, the subject says to me, no, I think we're good. I think I covered it. Or,
oh, I
no,
hate the answer. Yeah.
no, but then they give an answer anyway. So yes, and recap your key messages. Make sure you tell people how to find you. Give your URL.
Mm-hmm.
So my parting words are make the most of the parting words. And please, everyone, I put my URL in the chat, rosecom2ms.com, and find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, and I would love to continue this conversation. Thank you all for being here and your time today.
And she doesn't bite. She's very sweet.
Aw. Julie, final parting words, words of advice, anything?
Sure. I'll start with kind of where I began with this, which is that tell your story. You do need to choose those places where you tell your story. You do need to tell your story concisely and intentionally for whatever those environments are. You need to tell your story concisely and consistently, as Rosemary said, across the platforms that you're using. But step into your story. The more that you choose to invest yourself fully, to engage yourself more deeply, to speak with intention and listen to understand, the more you give permission for others to do the same, who will be connecting to your message, and the more you engage your audience. Stop trying to be confident and just be courageous. These are all things I tell myself on the daily, and I teach my kids. And any experienced presenter out there who looks confident, excuse me, got some allergies here, who looks confident has worked on that presentation. And you've heard two other people, and I will join in. We're more seasoned professionals. I'm nervous every time I go in front of a camera because what I do and what I have to say matters. And so do you.
Amazing. Yeah, amen. Thanks for that. Thank you, Seth. Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you, Julie. Thank you for everyone coming. There will be another entrepreneurial strategy session in March. Look out for that. We hope you tune in next month. And you'll see some marketing about that coming up. Anyway, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Rosemary, Seth, and Julie again. It's been a pleasure. And see you soon, everybody. Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Have a good
Take
day.
care.